G'day gang, Simo and Ed, and this week we're talking about...
Well, we're going to have a look at what's the real value in your go-kart track, and is there anything that's actually really saleable?
Interesting.
It is. I think it's something that crops up all the time, and we'll be sitting there scratching your heads now wondering why you're not getting millions and millions of dollars and pounds in return for all your blood, sweat and tears over the last few years.
That's it. Well, g'day, Simo, Ed, and you're watching the Fastline Track Growth Show, where we're talking all things karting and business. And this week we talk about the real value of your kart track.
We do indeed. I think there's no one way to really put a value on something.
Yeah, everyone has their own ways.
They will
You've
do.
got the textbook ways and then you've got others. But so we're going to have a look at the various people
that are involved in it.
That are involved in it and what they're looking for in a business that they want to invest in.
Well, yeah, let's start with the track owner. I've done a bit of M&A work, a bit of merger acquisition work for a friend of mine. He said it's like no other industry you've ever heard of before, and you're probably all nodding along thinking I'm talking about the karting industry, but every sector says this. But it is fairly true that most sectors have their own little nuances and bits and pieces. But it's entirely possible you sit there going, I've built a really good track here, it's worth $1 million or whatever the figure is. $1 million is a figure that crops up a lot in these sales processes. So you're sitting there thinking, well, you know what, I've done well, I'm thinking of selling up. I will go and get some really good advice.
Who do you go to?
Well, yeah, this is interesting. So the first thing I do, you jot down who you just won now in the next few seconds. Who would you have gone to go and get the advice on how much your business is worth and go about selling it? I'm guessing there's a couple of suspects here.
Yeah. Probably the first one of the top ones that they'll put there is the accountant.
The accountant, yeah, you go, I know somebody who knows numbers and understands business. I'll go and speak to the accountant.
Not a great move.
No. The accountants are probably throwing stuff at the screen right now, but don't go to your accountant first of all. Involve them. I mean, I'm not cutting them out. I just think it's a really poor starting point to go and get them to go and value your business. Numbers of times I've seen the financials come back. The telltale sign is Goodwill.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what does that mean? And then I've had a definition of what Goodwill is, but I can't finance Goodwill.
No.
I need something substantial to go and justify the price. And Goodwill's just like, the first thing that I do when I go and do M&A work, if I see the word Goodwill in there, I get my pen out.
Cross it off, just deduct it from the bottom line.
It also tells me you've spoken to your accountant. So I now know you've probably overvalued your business. Now, not always, I've got to stress, but often, most, more than half is most, but no, so often. I sit down with a business that's being valued with that word Goodwill in there and go, you spoke to your accountant yet? I'm looking at the figures going, how the hell have they justified this? And there's normally, quite often, percentage fees in there and stuff for other people. And there's all sorts of bits and pieces in there. Sometimes the accountant has a percentage interest in that figure. So they're sitting back, not having to really do too much, whilst inflating a figure and letting you go and do all the hard work while you're nailing your sort of, your retirement and everything or whatever you want to do, your next project, potentially, on the value of the track. You're sitting there going like, how on earth have they justified that? So I think I'd keep the accountant out of it first of all. I'm going to tell you who I would get involved in just a moment.
Yeah, accountants, another kind of group that get involved there are these business brokers. Now there's plenty of them out there. I'm getting calls all the time. I'm getting emails all the time. I'm getting letters all the time. Want to sell your business? We've got these people interested.
Yeah.
And if you're watching, I'm not ready yet.
Like, nobody can afford you. Haven't you had a figure done by your accountant? Yeah, business brokers, they drive me nuts. Right, I've actually met a pretty decent one recently. Yeah, well, we played a bit of golf, which helps. We had me playing my golf. We had quite a long time to talk on quite a decent course nearby where I live, and he was refreshingly different. It's the first time. This is real grey hair. First time in a long time I've heard somebody go, "Well, you never quite know what a business really is worth." I go, "Well, how do you deal with it?" Yeah, he goes, "Well, there's a few factors," and we started talking, and it's the first one I've met, and I've met a few, where I actually had a sensible conversation with him. Most business brokers, he didn't need the business. He's been doing it for a long time. He's even older than me. Right? He's been doing it a long time. He doesn't need the money. His approach is so more relaxed. Right? There's lots of brokers out there can set up. I think there's even franchises where you can become a business broker tomorrow after a 2-week training course, and you go out there, and of course you're trying to make fees, usually percentage based. So what do? You inflate the prices.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the hell? How have you justified this? Now the problem is, quite often you sit down with a business broker, from the buyer's point of view, because I've been there. You turn up and they go, well, I've got the last time I did it was for a care environment, health and social care environment. So I turn up and the business broker's told them, yeah, this business is worth 1.2 million. Yeah, great. So they've now got all their hopes, dreams, aspirations. They've told all their friends, oh, I've got £1 million business here. And we're sitting down looking at it and it's just crazy. Just as an anecdote, one of the worst ones I saw, we were sat in Manchester, just north of England, in the northern part of England. I mean, my friend is sitting looking through all the sort of, assets and everything, and I went, is that right? There's a property in here. Oh, that's mine. I'm like, yeah, that's the property, but it's owned by the business. It's like on your balance sheet here. I don't know. That's where I'm retiring to. Okay, you do realise you've just had your business valued with that asset on there, and it's a £600,000 property. Because I'm sitting there thinking this is going to be the easiest deal to finance ever, probably undervalued. No, that's the property I'm keeping. But the business broker also didn't understand that there was assets on there, based it on just pure business. Anyway, I digress.
So his 1.2 million
was just
business,
on, like, revenue figures with very little asset.
Turns out to be a £600,000 business.
Well, immediately,
if you take the asset out.
And then when you really bottled it down, it was just a flaky database and a couple of people with some phones up in Manchester. But let's not get too sidetracked. But this is the world that they operate in sometimes. So you're probably sitting there thinking, right, I'm going to go and sell. I'm going to have a chat with an accountant. I'm going to have a chat with a business broker. Probably not.
No.
I probably want to think long and hard. I'm not going to give you the answers, but you can reach out and we'll have a chat. But you probably want to think about who you want to buy the business first of all. And then make it really easy for people to go and buy that business.
Yeah.
But what that will do is it will start to highlight the true value of your business along the way. And what I mean by that is if you're going to go and reach out to somebody, you think, right, I want this person over here to buy it. Right? They're probably going to need a bit of finance, not always, but often. Or even there's a consideration of cash. It's like, what is the opportunity lost by them putting cash into your business? Right? I know you were looking at it as, what do you mean lost opportunities? This is all gravy, my friend. But this is what they're thinking. So what you probably need to do is have a think first about who you're going to sell it to and also how they're going to fund the purchase of the business, and then make it really obvious that you've got something that will fit in with that criteria. Then tell your accountant afterwards.
So how do finance and banks value businesses?
So there's probably going to be a bank involved at some point.
More than likely.
Yeah. This is common. Even with people that have got lots of money, quite often they'll look to get financing instead of spend all their own cash. Really sensible move. That's really sensible ways to take on proper debt, as I call it, as opposed to the crazy unsecured stuff you're doing, buying clothes and cars and things. So the banks are going to get involved at some point. Well, we have a thing over in the UK, I'm not sure if it's universal globally, but EBITDA, you probably have that in Australia.
Yeah.
So what the banks are probably going to look at is EBITDA figure, and I can't remember what it all stands for. It's earnings.
Earnings before interest, tax. Extraordinaries, is it?
No, amortisation. I can't remember what the D is. Debt. You want the EBITDA figure. And what that gives the buyer and the banks is a real net figure on what you're actually generating in real terms on your business. So they've done all the calculations. Your accountants certainly in the UK will know that. I'm guessing Australia. I can't see, it might be called something else in America, but I can't see it being too different. But you want that net figure. And there's probably a multiplier in your sector. Right now, I'm thinking go-karting, but it might come under leisure sector. But banks typically know that they will lend 3 times EBITDA in France on something that is a go-kart track. So have a chat with your bank. Get the relationship managers, go and find the people that are doing the finance and ask them. Go, what multiples do you work on? Now they'll think you're buying, so you can tell them that, so you can maintain the relationship for a while. But they might get a new customer out of this. But also there's an EBITDA times multiple. You can factor in some of the assets back into that. Most people will sit down and they'll say, let's keep it nice and broad brush stroke. Let's say there's a kart track owner sitting there going, right, well, I've just spent 350,000 on all my assets. So that's worth 350,000.
No.
And no, because
they depreciate.
Exactly, they're not worth a lot of money. I used to be in the insolvency game. We'd be working on 10% of what you bought it for. If you've got a working go-kart and it's been running for 6 or 7 months, it's probably got a high value in there, and you can get into the granular detail. But whatever you paid for your assets, it isn't worth that on paper.
No.
Now, you can factor some of that in, and it will help the banks because it gives them a little bit of security factor. But don't over-egg it. So you've got to really work that out. And also, the other thing the banks are looking at is the backstory.
Yeah.
They want to know what your vision is. So you've got to get this all set up and have a conversation. I can only relate it specifically to the guy that I was working for last time to go and help him pull a few deals together. He's steeped in health and social care. So he's got a management team that's steeped in health and social care, and they'd spotted a gap in the market. So all of a sudden, 3 funders stepped forward and went, really, tell us more. So they were interested in the story, first of all. We hadn't even got anything planned out. We're going, how much money can we have? They're going, 10, 12 million. But it didn't quite pan out like that because it never does. But they were very, very interested, and we did manage to put a few deals together.
Well, I mean, any time when we've ever tried to go for a loan, what's at the beginning of our document? Our bloody story.
Do they ask that on the beginning these days?
No, we do that.
Oh, you do that.
We've always done that. It's sort of like we portray our vision of the future, and we have a little bit of story about the business that we're in at the time. You know.
Well, that was my job in that last M&A. So not putting that story together at the beginning of a document, but we just hand them the figures. Right, so the 2 guys that have got it, one's like entrepreneurial, understands the market, here's the gap. One was finance numbers, understands the market, understands everything around that. And then what happens is we present that to the bank, and then some tosser from the bank sits across a desk. And the first thing they go is, that's great, how does this work? And you're like, it's in the document. But they're not asking that. They're asking the story. So at the point the numbers guy is like now ready to just kick them out of his office, how dare they? He's put everything together and all the figures add up and all dotted the I's and crossed the T. And the entrepreneurial guy spotted the gap in the markets going, can't you see it? I was like, no guys, go and make yourselves a cup of tea and coffee while I just go and sit and explain to him, because I've got to build a bridge. And that's that story. And that is so crucial if you're going to go and get the banks involved. And it's going to happen for most buyers. So really, really, really crucial. Next people who might buy?
Pension funds, VC, capital.
Yeah, pension funds or venture capital companies. I think size matters here.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're one track, I don't know what you're turning over. I don't know what your revenue figures are, right? If you've got one track and your revenue figures are probably touching somewhere over 10 mil, you can probably, there might be a pension fund out there, a small one, or there might be a VC company that would be interested.
But you know, a lot of VC companies have leisure arms.
Yeah.
And you know, they will usually buy up a decent size multi-track operation.
Yeah, now if you're not multi-track though, so this is important. If you're not multi-track, I'd be looking for VC company or pension funds I'd rather sell to, but it might have to go to VC that wants to fold into their current empire what I've got on offer, in this instance a kart track. You may have other bits and pieces going on at your kart track, in which case you're now a perfect fit for them, but if you're not, I'll go and do a little bit of a sales job. So I'm going to reach out to them and find out what they're looking for. Now, pension fund or VC looking for very different things, mainly returns.
Yeah.
So I keep hearing, and it changes, and they're a bit coy about this, but I used to know quite a few VC people back in the day when I had my insolvency business that I was running, and they used to often say about the golden return, as they used to call it quite often, and it's 28%. So whatever they take on board, they want to make 28% return. And you're going, great.
They tend to focus more on cash flow too.
Yeah, definitely. But they're looking for, so they want to know cash flow in terms of meeting the requirements of the loan. So can you sustain the payment on the loan? That's the question they're asking, not necessarily cash flow. Very close, but similar thing. The next thing they're looking is 28% return. And everybody goes, wow, that's cool. We could grow this by 28% over 12 or 18 months. You know, great, we're on board, aren't we? No, because they've got a portfolio of companies and some of them ain't going to make it, and there'll be a couple of unicorns in there that go and double and all the rest of it, and they need to have an average of 28%. So you want to really get into the skin of the VC and find out what they're really, really interested in. Whereas a pension fund company is probably, they're thinking longer term typically. VCs are probably getting in and getting out. So,
yeah, it's typically, 5 years?
Yeah, it might go to 7. But they might have a 7-year agreement to look to get out in 5. There'll be like, cracky, how long's a piece of string? So there'll be others that are in different lengths, but that's not uncommon.
But VC-backed companies, I think, in a lot of instances, are a disaster waiting to happen.
Go on.
Right, 28%. So, right.
Yeah.
The first one who buys in, great. They just grow the venues. Bang. They sell, they get the 28%. The next one, he adds a whole lot more venues, grows it 28%, sells it, bang. If that keeps going on, sooner or later, if they're not investing and making sure they've got the right systems and the centres are profitable, someone's going to get caught with a hot potato. And this has happened in the high street time and time again with VC-backed food chain restaurants. I mean, how many of them have we seen go pop?
I think this happens a lot. And I think if some of them have got... anyway, let's not like this. I was going to say something. There's lots of reasons why they may or may not do that. You might want to go to VC, though, because they can bring in management teams. You might not want to go to VC because they bring in management teams, right? As soon as you sign the paperwork, not only will you lose complete control of your business, regardless of what they tell you, right? The next thing that will happen is all of a sudden you'll have all these people around you, and if some of your payment is sort of bonus based, you've got to tread so carefully because you've lost control of your business as soon as that bit of paper's signed. So I'm happy to go and have a look at VC, and there's some really good angel investors out there actually. They can be really smart people to get hold of. They're hard to find, but they're great when you get hold of them. But true VC, I'm always very careful about who you get into bed with there. Pension funds, however, tend to think more long term. You know, they are looking in terms of 20, 30, 40 years, right? They're wondering, is it the go-kart track now? I wonder whether it is go-kart in its current format for 20, 30, 40 years. So your systems are going to be interesting. Your senior management team will be interesting to both these groups, but your story more than ever. You know, so where is it heading? Why should we invest? How are you going to ensure longevity for us? So they might be interested. Now, I would also do a bit of background checking. Are they interested in karting or leisure? Or are they interested in the land you're sat on?
Yes.
And I've seen this a few times. Having worked in the world of insolvency, what's going on? I don't know, I had a profitable business, all this stuff's going on, but money started to dry up in the bank, didn't want to play ball, and now they've got people lined up. What, they're lined up for a business that's not working? Yeah, it's really peculiar. It's nice land you're sat on, just just outside of a major city, and there's a little building coming through this way, or we've got HS2, a big train track being delivered in the UK. Oh, they were looking to put a train station somewhere. This would be prime, wouldn't it? So that sort of stuff, that hasn't gone on, by the way. It might have done, I don't know. I'm unaware, I'm not saying. But that is the sort of conversations that might go on. But again, we're looking at systems, we're looking at management, we're looking at that backstory. You'll start to see a theme in a minute. And the third lot of people,
entrepreneurs and hobby owners.
yeah, possibly existing track owners.
Yeah. Existing track owners wanting to build up their number of venues they've got. There's a couple around the world that are doing that at the moment. There's a crowd over in America, there's a crowd here.
I'd be very tempted if I was a kart owner, I think, for going for acquisition where possible. There's lots of variables in that comment. I'm sure you're bright enough and smart enough to work that out, but I'd probably be looking for acquisition because I can just scale that really quickly. And if I do that well, and I've got finance, and I've got a finance credit line open to me, then I can start to really plan and move. And we won't go into too much detail. I don't want to just take on one more track. If I've got one track, I don't want one more. If I got one track, I want 3 or 4 more, but for another day maybe.
There's efficiencies in scaling.
Yeah.
Having 2 tracks doesn't mean you bring in twice the revenue.
No. Well, 2's difficult. 3, you're probably going to find a loss in your own personal bank account. Right, that's going to hurt.
You need to get to about 5, isn't it?
Yeah, and then once you're going back for a credit line and going, I've got another one, the bank's looking at you going, but you're earning less money than you were when you first met us. I don't think we're going to lend on that. So you've really got to get everything lined up and have a think about who you're selling to and why and how you want to scale if you're looking to purchase.
But if you are looking to purchase,
yeah.
If you are looking to grow your venues,
yeah.
right, you still need that story to sell it to the bank.
You do.
You still need that management team, right? And you still need all of those systems and procedures. Because if you've got a cookie cutter model that you can just roll in and you've got the senior management staff that can implement that, you're going to do a lot better. I mean, I've seen before when people have tried to take on additional tracks and they don't have those things. They don't have the story. They don't have a way to generate rhythmic
acquisition of clients,
and they don't have that systems and the procedures and things like this.
You've got to be able to turn the cash on.
Yeah.
And if you can turn the cash on, people go, oh, that's great, we've got lots more cash and everybody will be happy. But it's the next stage of reinvestment of that extra cash that will make or break the track. Right? So, but everybody talks about systems, they talk about senior management, they talk about the story, but what the heck are they? Well, I'd love to go into that today, but
we don't have time.
We don't have time today, but good news, you know how this works. We've got another video coming in a week's time.
Yep. And we'll get into a bit more detail on that.
Yeah, so we're going to look at the systems, we're going to just talk a bit more about cash flow, but it'll be the difference between having a track that's never going to sell for $1 million and one that they'll be biting your arm off for now. We've let you know about a few people that I'll be approaching before the accountants and the business broker. So when I approach them, they've also got the story, so everybody's lined up now for a fantastic sale and a very happy retirement or next project.
All right, well, it's goodbye from me.
Cheerio from me.
And we'll see you next week.
See you in a bit.